Good evening, everyone. I'm Maria Carpenter, the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations here at Bridgewater College, and I'd like to welcome you to tonight's virtual event, Catching Up with Coach Spots. We look forward to the day that we can once again gather safely on campus. But in the meantime, our alumni office is hosting a variety of virtual alumni events, as well as a video series that can help keep us connected even when we can't be closer than 6 feet apart. This session will be recorded and posted on our new YouTube channel, Bridgewater College Alumni Relations, as well as our alumni Facebook page. At the end of tonight's event, there will be a Q&A session, so please ask all questions via the chat feature at that time. First, we would like to welcome head baseball coach Ben Spots.
Well, thank you, Maria. I appreciate that. Excited to be here. And I know if you had told me 6 months or a year ago we'd be doing this, I would have thought, no, there's no way, but this is the new norm right now. So I certainly appreciate you guys putting this opportunity together to connect with our alumni.
Absolutely. And Ben, just to start, can you tell us a little bit about where the program is now, what you're kind of working on? Like you said, this is not something we would imagine 6 months ago. So I want to go ahead and hand the beginning off to you to kind of tell people about where we're at, and then you can introduce our first guest for the evening.
Well, sure. Well, I think as we kind of start here and we're back in the fall season, I know a lot of our players are a lot of the players that we've had that are alumni. I know certainly this is a fall season and a fall time of year for us to have practice. And with the COVID and the thing of the change of things, it's kind of put us on a delay. So I am excited to say we started practice. Yesterday was our first fall practice. So our fall season looks a little bit different than traditionally has been. But we were out on the field yesterday, and there's some rules and some stipulations you have to follow by with, pods and masking and so forth, and some social distancing. But certainly it's exciting to be back out there. I'm, excited after how last season ended, which I can talk about in a second, but how it ended. That's good to just be back on the field again. And I guess a lot of things you take for granted just about being around each other and just kind of the flow of a school year, baseball season across the flow of it that was away. That it's good to be back out there today. So, we are allowed to practice 3 days a week. So we go Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. We've got 2 pods that come for an hour and a half, and we can carry that through up until the week before Thanksgiving. So in this time, it's certainly different than the traditional fall season, but it's something that we're excited to be a part of and do. As far as, what does that mean for our spring season? Right now there's a lot of questions on that. What is it going to look like? How many games we'll be able to play? Can we travel overnight, yay or nay? So there's a lot of things that we're still trying to work through as a conference to decide what that looks like. And we hope to have some better idea and clarity on what that looks like in the coming weeks. But right now, anything we can do to get together and have a season, we're excited about, and certainly we'll see what that looks like. And it's something that's not just limited to Bridgewater. I mean, everyone's going through it across the country at every different level. So, our goal, as I've told our guys, is to remain positive about it, adjust to what's going on, accept it, and be positive about it, and continue to go about our business. Because I do know that when the time comes in when the time comes into springtime and we start practice and games start being played, there'll be no excuses as far as trying to win those ball games and do what our program's expected to do. So, that's kind of where it's at for this year, but we are excited to be back on the field in the fall right now with our guys and trying to see where our program and our club is at for the 21 season. I guess the only thing I would add to that too is just how last year ended. My first year back was certainly exciting for me, having been an alumni from here, having coached here for 14 years. So spending, 18 years here between a player and a coach. So it was exciting for me to be back. And I can't say enough in that first year back that the leadership that senior class provided last year, accepting the vision I have, the direction I have for the program, and the work we wanted to put in. And those guys, got on board and really helped to try to make that message, an easy message for those guys to get on board with. So the work they put in was great. And certainly, I bring that up because our 2020 season, we were 11-4. We were 2-1 in league play and off to a really good start and playing really well. And was excited about the year we were having. So I say it to those 8 seniors that helped to kind of get my time back here as the head coach in a positive direction. That was certainly disappointing to, have those guys his career end the way it did with not knowing it would be their last game. Certainly one time that seniors all have is opportunity to know when senior days come, when their last home game, their last baseball game in college. And these guys didn't get that opportunity. But fortunately, we did win their last game they played. We had I believe it was 14-9 victory at Washington and Lee. So we finished the season that we did have on a positive note and really started to play good baseball. So I'm appreciative to those 8 seniors and what they did in that transition, and certainly disappointed how it ended for them. But at the same time, they did certainly leave their mark here as far as, my first year.
Thank you, Ben. I also just, want to say I know everyone appreciates your dedication through this time. For everyone, it's been a pivoting act where, you're used to the normal, and that's not the normal anymore. So we appreciate you, working with our guys and trying to get them ready for whenever the season starts, hopefully sooner than later.
As I tell them all the time, there'll be no excuses when the time comes. Be ready to go play and expect to win. So that's our mentality.
Well, that's the right mentality to have. Would you mind introducing our first guest of the evening, Ryan Morris, who's class of 97?
Sure. Well, I think, when I had the opportunity to speak here, I wanted to try to bridge two eras of Bridgewater College baseball. And I think one of the unique things for me coming back as an alumni and then coming back as an assistant here for so many years is that I know so many of these classes of alumni. I know about them who've played here, whether it's through alumni games, that we used to have, whether it was through, just different alumni events and just being a part of the program for years. So I think, I thought of 2 guys and Ryan Morris came to mind as a guy that not only I played with here at Bridgewater in a successful time period, but also he coached here as well with Coach Kendall for 2 years, I believe, before moving on to continue coaching. And he left Bridgewater after playing here and coaching. He left to go to Old Dominion University and start his Division I coaching career, and was at Old Dominion and then Virginia Commonwealth University and back to Old Dominion University before recently, I guess a few years now, I guess it is Nugget, making the change to get out and have a career path change in what he's doing. So, but I tell you this, he's a baseball guy at heart. He knows baseball through and through. And even though he's, when he left here and was a Division I coach, he would always think about Bridgewater and the time he spent here, not only as a player, but he understood Bridgewater and really what it did for him, but also continued to help us in recruiting and trying to find guys he thought were good fits. And actually, he's living in North Carolina now and working as a financial advisor, and he continues to be involved with the game and keep in touch with us on players he thinks are worthwhile to follow up with. So, I trust him like anybody when it comes to baseball and knowing what fits here at Bridgewater. So he's a guy I thought of because he's full of energy. He's got a great love for Bridgewater College and is never short on conversation. So I welcome Ryan Morris, and as we all know him as Nugget, to join us here. Nugget, how's it going?
It's going great, Ben. I got to tell you, I was listening to you. I don't know if half that's even true. It sounds weird hearing it on this end, but humbled and honored to be a part of anything revolving around your program now, or our program at Bridgewater. As you said, it's done a lot for me. Certainly put me on the path to what led to be a really fun time for me in baseball. And as you said, I'm still involved in the game in a different way now. But just honored to be a part of this call and hopefully reach out to maybe some alum that I haven't heard from in a while. Some maybe I have, really hope to get folks excited about if they haven't been a part of the program recently, look to reignite their support of Bridgewater in the future, because you guys are doing some exciting things. So really glad to be here.
Well, I appreciate that. And I guess really the thing, for people to know that, when I got hired here, but I've always, the years I've been coaching, Nugget's always been a close resource for me to ask questions to and just get his ideas on coaching, whether it's strategy or just program information or just different ideas. And certainly him being an alumni here, understands the value of Bridgewater and, what it did for him, but what it's done for other ones has come through as well. So I'm certainly glad to have him and thought of him as a guy to join on this and hop on here. And I guess, I guess one of the first things I'll ask Nugget, just, that time of life when you came in here, I believe it was the fall of the spring of 94.
Yeah, it was, well, as you guys, I think you still have it, the blessing in disguise of midterm. I mean, who knew there was a 3-week class anywhere on the planet Earth?
Oh, the interterm. Yeah. They moved.
Interterm. Yeah.
You came in during interterm in 1994.
Yeah, that's when I came in. I transferred in from Virginia Wesleyan that year after a year and a half there, which was not a good experience for me. And really looking for a home and looking for a group of teammates, a group of guys that were accepting and were similar to me and what our goals were. And quickly found out that's what the program was about. I won't spill the beans on who our next guest is, but right away I found out that there had been a lot of good players and a lot of good teams ahead of us. And I think all of us at that time, really felt a kind of a responsibility to uphold our reputation as a program. I mean, I think back of, Greg Rose, as everybody knows as Petey, and Joel, and those guys who really talked about the guys before them and the expectations in that program. And obviously Coach Kendall had been a part of all those teams and even when he was an assistant to Coach Kinder. So it was a very, I think, a storied tradition that you just kind of felt, especially as an outsider. I wasn't from the Valley. You guys remember I came in my Jeep from the beach and thought I'd barely seen a cow at that point. So, but learned quickly that it was a good place to play, a good place to be a student, a good place to be. And it was really good for me. It's what I needed at the time as a student athlete. And little did I know then, but it really shaped me as a player, being around like-minded teammates, but it shaped me as a person as well. Some of the things that happened, throughout my career there and even after my career really shaped me. My teammates and some of the people we played with helped really, I think, make me the person I became. And then, looking back on it not only as a player, but then as a college coach for almost 15 years, and even now as a financial advisor, it really shaped me as a professional. And I think the thing that probably stands out to most of me as my experiences there was on those teams that I played on, 94, 95, 96, were really good teams. But I think the ingredient that made those teams really good was the fact that no one was off limits. If you didn't show up and do your job, someone was going to let you know. And I think as a professional today, that still rings true in me, that you got to show up and work every day. You got to show up and play hard. You got to show up and do your job. And that's where really when I think of the baseball program, that's what it's always been. And I think the folks on this call tonight are a reflection of that. Certainly you, as a teammate of mine, always had the utmost respect for. And the next guy that you'll introduce later, heard about him as a player and always thought, man, that guy sounds like a tough guy. Sounds like a guy I'd want to play with. Love to be a teammate of his. And then later on, got to know him really well. And yeah, he would have been a great teammate. And as I would consider him a friend to this day. So yeah, that place meant a lot to me at that time, and still does.
Well,
and I have a 2-part question. First, thank you, Ryan. Or should I call you Nugget? I don't know. What's
I don't answer often to Ryan, so please.
Well, thank you, Nugget. I have a 2-part question. So one for Nugget and one for Coach Spots. So something you mentioned at the beginning of what you said was how, Nugget, just to know who I'm referencing, was you said how you think it's really important for alumni to still be engaged with the program and to come back. And I think, especially as we all know, these last couple months have been such a reprioritization for people, where you have more time in some ways, and, you look at what am I really spending my time on? What are things that I haven't had time to invest in that I want to invest, meaning, you know, time, energy, just care and things like that. So what are ways that you are, you know, mentally invested, or, you know, volunteer time with the team, you know, different things like that for Bridgewater baseball? And then Coach Spots, can you share ways that alumni who may be watching tonight, or people who are friends of the college who are big supporters of our baseball program, what are a variety of ways that, you know, they can be in touch? Because it's not just, you know, there's so many different ways to
Sure.
be invested and to give of different things. So if you want to share Nugget first, kind of the ways you do and what it means to you as a baseball alumni, and then Coach Spots, ways that people can get involved.
Sure.
Absolutely. I'd love to do that. So, you know, from my perspective, it may be a little different. Obviously, spending as a player there at Bridgewater and then coaching there 2 years, and then moving along to Old Dominion, VCU, and then back to Old Dominion. And in those times at Old Dominion and VCU, I was a recruiting coordinator, spending a lot of time on the road, trying to find, you know, the best players I possibly could. And I learned an awful lot more about alumni involvement during those years, to be honest with you, at Old Dominion and VCU. Quite frankly, you know, the finances of those programs were driven by alumni and their support. Throughout those years, even though I wasn't coaching at Bridgewater, personally for me, I really tried to use every resource I could to give back to the program, whether it was equipment that could be passed along to that program that was harder for them to get, whether it was time when I could to come back and be around the team and offer any help on the field that I could, whether it was passing a name along as I saw a player that I thought, man, that would be a guy that I would love to play with at Bridgewater. So there were a lot of things during that time that I really felt like I could help and tried to when I could. And obviously financially, I mean, you know, that's going to help any program at any level. Now, what I learned during those times at Old Dominion and VCU were the different ways that alumni could help that didn't have the resources that I had as a coach. And as a coach at those places, I found really that, you know, there are a few ways. If you're sitting at home today going, well, you know, I can't really go to games. I can't really, you know, maybe you got, you know, 4 kids you're trying to send to school. You can't, you know, maybe you can't put a check in the mail. You know, there are other ways to help. Obviously, I think, you know, Bridgewater College baseball can use every bit of financial support that we can give them. It's just simply put. So every little bit helps. And I like to think of it, you know, I think all of us that played there are really proud to tell people we played there. And I don't want that to change. And the only way that will remain that way is if the program continues to improve. Because if you're not getting better, you're actually getting worse, right? So, it does take financial support to do that, but not everybody can do that. The other ways that you can support that program is really moral support. You know, if you are able to get to some games, get to some events, things that, and I'll tell you, I've connected with guys that I played with recently that have vacationed here in Emerald Isle. Alan Snow, Corey Heinball come to my house. Our kids are able to mingle and hang out. And Ben has worked tirelessly to connect some of those dots. And quite frankly, you know, a lot of us are starting to talk about, hey, let's go back. Let's have an event. Let's do something where we can all get together on campus. I think that's really important. But I think supporting the program, just being there and being around and mentoring some of the younger players. I know as a player, seeing guys come back, I didn't want to embarrass them. I wanted to, you know, alumni day, I wanted to play good. I wanted to, if they came to a game, I wanted to play good. I wanted to win. Because I didn't want them to be like, man, these are the guys that are screwing it up for us right here. I wanted I wanted to continue on a tradition they had started. And then I think the third thing that I think a lot of people forget about is all of us that played there are probably decent baseball minds. I mean, to play in the program is a good program. So you know a little bit about baseball. And wherever you may be that you can't get back, you know, pick up the paper. There's kids around playing in the area that might be pretty good. Give Ben a call. Let him know there's a pretty good kid that keeps showing up to the paper with 3 doubles. You know, tell Ben about him. I mean, there's only so many coaches that can go out on the road and recruit. Even at the Division I level, there's only 3 coaches that can go, you know, out there and recruit. And then when you're limited financially and limited with some of the other rules that Division III has, you know, word of mouth at any level is so important. So some of you guys that are out there coaching high school baseball or just, you know, travel ball or whatever you're doing, and you see a player, man, that guy seems like a good kid and a pretty good little player. Let Ben know about him. It'll save him a ton of work. And I think there are a few ways that, you know, I've tried to help. I hope I don't step on Ben's toes with that, but there's a few ways that I've tried to help and a few ways that I think a lot of people forget how much it helps just in a few of those areas, just being aware of supporting the program.
Well, I think, and I appreciate that, Nugget. Nugget is right. Like after being an assistant here for 14 years with Coach Kendall, I came back and there was still some equipment that Nugget gave to our program when he was at Old Dominion. You know, he had gave us travel bags and, you know, bats and just catcher's equipment and stuff when he was at Old Dominion, stuff that oftentimes he wouldn't, you know, they would just change a contract or get something different or change who sponsored him and have extra gear. He'd say, hey, look, you want to drive down and get it. So those were things he did to help our program because he knew those things were good for our players to have, but also too what he's done recruiting wise to help us. Even right now, even back in the pandemic, he had a young man that was in that area. I had a conversation with about looking at Bridgewater, and he continues to send me some information on a fall league he's helping with now with some players because he understands what we're trying to find. So I think, you know, my goal in year one, coming back here, being an alumni, but having played here, knowing that was just to try to really create connection with our alumni back here. And I want, you know, current alumni, I know they're always welcome back. There's nothing that excites me more to have guys come on campus to drop by. You know, unfortunately, I missed Tyler Slanovic and Darren Yoder. I was actually in Harrisburg buying a refrigerator on Friday, and they had texted me and said, hey, they were swinging through, got off the interstate to come by and look at campus. As they were on down to, I believe, Dylan Vai's wedding, you know, across the mountain in Charlottesville, probably, or somewhere in that area, and just wanted to stop by. I mean, that makes me excited. Last year, Blake Stokely, who played for me when I was an assistant here, just popped in the office one day, no idea. And it was great just to catch up with him for an hour or so and just, you know, see a guy that I hadn't seen in years. And I didn't plan on seeing. He popped in. You know, we were fortunate last year. I wanted to try to create a connection with our current roster. And when Coach Kendall retired, you know, they did the Champions Wall in the outfield, which really highlights the success he had for this program. And it's a great looking and impressive, you know, outfield fence banner they put up with 14 conference titles, 10 NCAA regionals. And it's a high point. We always stress to recruits when they come here that there's an expectation to win. We've won, if you look from 78 to the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, like our last one's not that long ago in 2014, that this program's been a winner. And our players see those numbers out there every day. And I wanted to try to create a connection with our players in those numbers. So starting last year, we started, you know, trying to talk about those teams. You know, I was fortunate last year to have Robbie Moose reach out to me, was coming up to campus for an event, and he talked to our guys last fall. Ricky Reed, who I coached as an assistant and recruited years ago, was coming up here for some business. He gave me a call, said, hey, I'd love to have you talk to our team. Like, those were great opportunities for guys who helped hang numbers on that wall out there to talk to our players and really look back as they're older now with families and really be able to look back and say, hey, I wish I had known this when I was in your shoes, or this was helpful to know. And that connection piece is really huge. You know, and then last year too, we did the alumni event in January, just trying to really start an event that came back. And I really wanted to have 3 different guys speak in different eras. And, you know, Greg Eckroyd spoke. Chad Hensley and Tyler Hoffman covered 3 eras of Bridgewater College baseball in that tradition. And not only to other alumni, but to our current team as well, attended the event in January. It was well attended. And it was just an opportunity to get alumni to come back together. So, you know, my goal was to try to create several times throughout the year that alumni can return to campus for specific events, but they're also welcome to come back anytime. And I think that's one of the things that really helps to connect our current roster to our alumni in the past. And that's what we're trying to do, is we put that and formulate that together in kind of a year-round plan.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nugget, for sharing some different ways that, one, you have contributed, over the years in different capacities, but also how other people can. Like you said, I mean, even if it's not donating, donating funds or donating equipment or things like that, it takes, $0 and about 2 minutes to read the newspaper and say, hey, there's this great kid in the area, and send a text, or an email to Coach Spots and say, here's someone you might want to check out. Absolutely. Word travels fast, and that kind of free information is very valuable and a great way to support the program. That was a unique one I hadn't heard as much, so I appreciate you sharing that. And Coach Spots, like you said, the power of persuasion of alumni, talking and saying, I had an incredible experience when I was a part of the program, and this is something you want to be a part of too. I think so many times with students in college, there's fear of the unknown, where it's your K through 12th is kind of predicted, and college is a big step of an unknown, but there's some structure. And then after that, it's the big open wide world, and it can be scary and exciting at the same time. So having alumni come back that say, hey, I was playing on that field too, like I was a part of the program, and here's things I learned from the program that helped me, not just in college, but in life school,
Yeah.
and kind of beyond. So, but I love that, the relationships build and how people want to come back and say hi and make those connections. I think that's invaluable compared to anything else.
Well, and
So
the one piece of that too that I always very proud of, and I want our alumni to know that we stress it, is that the tradition here is so deep that no one's won 14 conference titles, been to 10 regionals, and done as consistently and as long as we've had, as our program has. And our league is very good, and people continue to put money into resources and staffing and recruiting and facilities. So certainly it's very, very competitive. At the same time, I know that people in our league have chased Bridgewater for years, and the success that Coach Kendall established and this commitment of our program and the success of the players we've had here. So, one of the things I always tell our current players, and I want our alumni to know, that if you run across somebody that was class of, 94 or 99, and you don't know them, and then if you don't, but you both played at Bridgewater, you had a common bond. And there was a program, you had to be a good player. There was success in that program. You had similar experiences. And there's a common bond amongst guys. And I think that was one thing really we tried to establish last year when we did the event in January, to have, I was very excited about the turnout we had. And I'm very grateful to those who came back. Alan Snow really pushed hard to reach out to some people that I didn't have contact with. It really was great to just have that intermingling between our current players and those alumni that came back. And it was just, I couldn't have asked for more in the first year to try to establish that connection.
no, absolutely. And thank you for explaining more about that. And at this time, just temporarily, I'm going to say goodbye to Nugget, but he'll be coming right back after this next section. And I'd love for Coach Spots to introduce our next guest, Barry Davis, class of '87.
Well, Barry Davis is certainly, I consider, a very good friend of mine. And he was one of those guys, as Nugget referred to. I heard about Barry, his intensity, the success, the quality of player he was, but also his love for Bridgewater College. And for a guy that played here, that played for two different coaches in the Tom Kinder era and the Kurt Kendall era, that I think is really someone that I've been able to connect with as far as his excitement about being at Bridgewater. So he played here, a successful career. I know he wanted to get into college coaching, and I think, if I'm right, Barry, you've now done this for 31 years? 31 years, between being at, I think he was at Gloucester County College, and was very successful there and won 4 national championships, and then went down south to Georgia was Georgia Southwestern State for 4 seasons before he came back to Division I Rider University, where he's had a lot of success. And, Barry is a baseball coach through and through. And he understands programs, understands what it takes for programs to be successful. He continues to help us in recruiting as well, as a guy in New Jersey that helps our program out. Has been supportive of our program in several ways. And, I got to know Barry when I would go with Kurt to ABCA conventions, and he would always make sure we hooked up with Barry. And I got to meet Barry every year and continue to have dinner with him. And just as another guy that always was very welcoming to myself and welcoming to, our program as a whole and continue to support it. So I thought that Barry would be a great guy because the success he had as a player, but also that time frame he played with is that, that mid 80s from 84 to 87, and really two different coaches that were legends here with Tom Kinder and the longest he was at Bridgewater, and obviously what Kurt was able to do for him would be a great guy to have come on. So I welcome Barry on here. As I always appreciate spending time with him.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate you having me on. It's always a pleasure to reconnect with Bridgewater in any capacity, and for you to ask me to come on and say a few things about my experiences, at Bridgewater before actually when I got to Bridgewater, and through my 4 years and since then in 1987. It's a long time ago, but it doesn't seem that long ago because I can remember games and trips and the people that I grew to love those guys. I mean, when you're there, you don't realize it when you're there, and then when you get away, you kind of miss it. But Bridgewater to me is probably the single most important time period in my life. Those 4 years taught me a lot. I mean, when I came out of high school, I mean, I was totally unprepared. As a student, for the most part, my baseball background, you play high school, you had some success, but when I got to Bridgewater, it taught me slowly how to be a leader, and that took a while. But probably the most important thing is I was jotting things down, trying to kind of get a core answer. Bridgewater built confidence in me. In the classroom when I was a physical education major, and Miss Mapp, Coach Mapp, and Dr. Heisman, Coach Spencer, John Spencer, Dr. Kinder, Carl Whitelow, all those guys, they would allow you, they forced you to get up in front of the class. They forced you to kind of get out of your shell and be comfortable. And what I've learned over the years is that successful people, it's being uncomfortable, learning how to be uncomfortable and fighting through those things. And Bridgewater, in reflection, allowed me to do that. I didn't know it at the time, but I wasn't comfortable talking in front of people. I wasn't comfortable being in different places around different people, and it allowed me to do that. And then each year it just got a little better. And by the time I was a sophomore, and I would say the fall of 84, I started to feel more comfortable. I didn't go home. I grew up in Charlottesville, for those of you that don't know that. So I was only an hour away, but I wouldn't leave. I would show up in, the first weekend, and I wouldn't leave until Thanksgiving. And it just became a part of me. And it's just a special place. And every time when I go back and when I recruit, when I was recruiting at Rider years ago, they used to play a lot of tournaments there at Bridgewater, and I would come over in August, and a little bit more than I have lately because the landscape of recruiting has certainly changed. But when I come over that hill and I can see the campus, there's a feeling that comes over me that if I did it today, it just feels special. And it's a place where it's comforting to me, and the people were great to me there. And of course, there was adversity and challenges and those types of things as an 18, 19, 20-year-old that you got to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But Dr. Kinder, I don't know who exactly is on the call that actually played with Dr. Kinder, but he was an interesting gentleman. He loved to run us, and that was the one thing that when you get a pair of track shoes on your first practice, and looking back on it, they weren't real nice track shoes. They were probably hand-me-downs from the track team. But they gave those to us. We thought that's probably not a good sign. But we run up and down that cardiac hill, and 3.7 miles on the first day of practice. But he believed in conditioning, and we were well conditioned. And Kurt was the assistant, so Kurt became kind of my friend, or our friends. Brent Mitchell and Randy Smith and Billy Dickerson and I, we were work study guys, and so we'd get up in the morning and work on get ready for the football game. We'd run the chains during the game. I mean, we were we were doing all kinds of things, sweeping the floor at halftime in the basketball game. And see, those are like uncomfortable things for a guy right out of high school. But as I got accustomed to being there, and I started to grow up a little bit. Of course, you never really grow up if you're coaching and you're playing baseball. But it was always a comforting place. And I learned a lot. It helped me grow as an individual. And then I guess it got me on the path as an adult to begin my career. And it taught me to think about a future, built confidence in me. I had a vision. I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to be a high school coach first. And then somewhere, I don't know, second year, third year, I decided, I want to be a college coach. And so that was my focus. And that's where I had my attention, and I knew what I wanted to do, and Bridgewater prepared me in every facet. Student teaching, I got a great education there, and I think it was more of me building confidence, getting confidence in myself. So Bridgewater is a really special place to me, and I really enjoy coming back. I don't come back as much, but there will be a day when I quit coaching, and it's coming sooner rather than later. And I'll be able to come down a lot more, Ben, be able to, connect and get a little bit more involved.
Well, I know certainly in the conversations we've had over the years, and I know that, I know it was a special time for you I know when you were inducted in the Hall of Fame in 2014, I believe, that, when I always look back and see the baseball members that are inducted in our Hall of Fame, that's going to know most of them, and then certainly, plenty more that are deserving to be in that'll go in certain times. But I know that for you to go in, I don't know if icing on the cake, but it was just a good opportunity for you once again to celebrate your time here. And I know as we've talked, and I had you talk to our leadership council this year over the Zoom in the summer, just like I did with Nugget as well. You really stressed the relationship piece and the friendships of the people you played with when you were here that made it a special place.
Well, I really miss seeing those guys. We're kind of spread out now, and I live in Pennsylvania, work in New Jersey, but every I don't say every year, but probably every other year when we take our teams to Virginia, this past year we played at James Madison, and we played at Richmond a couple years ago, and there's always an ex-player, or I say an ex-player of mine if I coached them. Or a teammate of mine that's in the area that'll try to, meet me at the game or see me at the game. We'll go out to dinner. Brent Mitchell's met me several times, and Brent's a great friend in Roanoke. Randy Smith stopped by this year at James Madison. Years ago we were playing over at UVA, and Pat Shiflett was there, and Greg Eckroyd showed up at Richmond. I always let them know that I'm going to be in the area, and they do their best to get over. So there is a strong bond there, and I really miss seeing them. We'll probably talk a little bit more, but getting together and seeing everybody is important, especially as we continue to grow older. There is going to be a time where we're not going to be around here, and we want to be able to see and talk to everyone, and just relive some of those great days that we had and memories. And a lot of it's probably not even the baseball games. It's more of like just hanging around and being in the dorm or being out at night, or, things that happened that are just fun, great memories. But really, really loved it.
Well, I will tell you, and I know that Maria may come back in here, and I'll let Maria go. I know she's got to kind of bring Ryan back in here because I had a thing or two I want to talk to Barry about, but.
No, you go ahead and talk to Barry. You go ahead.
Well, the reason I bring this up because just, I'm very passionate about Bridgewater College and the eras of time and the baseball, and certainly my excitement to be back here as a head coach and certainly build upon the success of the program that Kurt established. And it excites me. It was always a goal of mine after having such a good experience here and really enjoying being here. But I was looking today, Barry, and I was going through, some old media guides, just because I always know the years that people won, the teams, from each year that the Bridgewater had success. But I went back and looked, and, with 84, 85, 86, 87, the success that the program had for you, that kind of really started to kickstart this program off. Because I know we had won it in 78. But I know that when you look at the 2 years you played with Dr. Kinder, and then the 2 years you played for Kurt, and Kurt was a young head coach at the time. but he walked into a pretty good situation in '86 as far as the team you guys had. So just going back and looking, you know, you were 14-10 in '84, 18-11 in '85, and was ODAC champions. ODAC champions in 1986, you're 23-7, and then '87 you were 18-11. You know, and I went back and looked in the 4 years you played and the teams you played with, you were 73, 39-2 over a 4-year period. And certainly you had a great career and were an all ODAC player. But the teams you played on, I thought really tried to establish that first round of what Bridgewater College baseball is about. And I know you guys were knocking on the door, and I always hear Kirk talk about this, about trying to make the schedule tougher because you couldn't quite get to that postseason tournament. But yet you won 2 conference titles, and in the year after you left in '88, they won another one, I believe.
Yeah.
So you played with a lot of guys who had really started to establish the success this program experienced. And I just wanted to kind of have you talk a little bit on those, your 4 years here, the success you had, and what some of the ingredients were.
Well, when I was a freshman, I mean, we were just playing. I mean, we were coming to practice. I mean, I didn't know. I mean, college baseball in 1983 in the fall is nothing like it is now. It's not. But all of us had the group that I was with, and I'd have to say name, the senior group with Billy Dickerson, myself, Randy Smith, Jeff Dean. I think Alan Stadler was in that class. I think he came in like 2 years later. I think Alan was there, I believe, there 85, 86, 87. He was an excellent pitcher. He was a guy that could win just when he was on, he was as good as anybody we had. But that group together, my sophomore year, we had some Pud Harmon, Bruce Pud was his name. We called him A. He was playing there, and Jeff Poling was a good player. But we had a group that sort of stuck together from 85, 86, and 87. I mean, Brent Mitchell was in left field. Timmy Schiff was in center field. I played shortstop. Billy played third. Randy Smith played second. Greg Eckroyd, Charlie, I can't think Charlie's last name right off the top of my head, but we were all together. Jimmy DeLucas, Jeff Dean, Tim Zombro, all these guys were, Alan Stadler, Freddie Heatwell. We were all together for 2 to 3 years. And when you're together like that, and you're playing hard, and you're playing for each other, I don't remember any fire and brimstone speeches given by the coaches. We just went out. I think we went out and played. They let us play. It wasn't overcomplicated, and we got hot there in '85. And I know I was talking to you a little bit earlier about that. I mean, we were the 5th seed, and I can't remember if we were playing well or not, but we went over to Eastern Mennonite and played exceptionally well. Beat Doug Byler. He was a real good pitcher. They had one pitcher, and he was the one guy that could beat you. And we knocked him around a little bit. And the way it was set up back then, it was single elimination. So you lost it was single elim, 8 teams. We win. Lynchburg at that time, and I'm sure during a lot of these guys' careers that have played at Bridgewater, Lynchburg has always been very, very good. I think their head coach for years when you were playing, Percy Abel. Percy was a player. Percy and I grew up together. We played against each other in high school over in Charlottesville. He was from Crozet, but he went to Lynchburg. But they had a tremendous program, and they were number 1, and they had beaten us pretty badly during the season. And they lost. And when they lost, it was something that happened. I remember players coming in the room and telling and screaming that we're going to win this tournament. They were one of those teams that, and you guys know if you played in athletics, there's always that one team that you got to get through. The tournament goes through Lynchburg, and or the championship goes through Lynchburg. But this time it didn't. And we called a break, and then Randolph-Macon won. They were the highest seed, but they couldn't play at home because the Richmond Braves were the team that had the stadium where the tournament would have been played at the Diamond. So we got to host it, and we played Washington Lee, beat them 8-7, and then we played Randolph-Macon at night. Freddie Heatwell, who I don't think, and I have to go back. You got to go back and look at the stats if they have them. I don't think Freddie pitched a whole lot during the season, but Freddie pitched a gem, and we beat him, I believe, 6-4 up at the stadium in Harrisonburg. And I think that that little stretch of about a week or two is what turned and I always say that everybody says that, they were the program that turned it and got it going. Well, guess what? 85 got it going. And in 86, we basically were really confident. And Kurt came in and he didn't mess it up. He didn't try to do too much. He was great. He was great. He was great. He was just, it was comfortable. There was no pressure. We played hard, had a good season, beat Randolph. We were the best team in the league that year. And there was no ifs, ands, or buts. And then my senior year, we got beat in the championship. I made 3 errors at shortstop. I don't think I made an error the whole month of April, but I made up for it in one game in May. And that was a bad night for me. A tough night to end my career on, but it's always kind of the running joke. But baseball will humble you. I've been doing it for 32 years, and you don't think you ever figured it out. But those years were great years for us, and we look back on it, and we didn't know really what we were doing. We were just playing and having fun and trying to win. And beating Lynchburg was always at the top. And it's funny, we played Randolph-Macon all 3 of those championship games. And we beat them twice. They beat us once, so they probably were due. And it's just a great time period. And then it's always been fun to watch from afar to see how you're doing. And now with the internet and streaming, you can really keep up, unlike you could back in the late '80s, early '90s. But great years. There was nothing I would change. Nothing.
Well, it's funny when you go back and I'm looking across some of those today, it's just amazing. And I even look back to when I played, how much smaller rosters were then than they are now. And you'd only throw 6 or 7 pitchers a year.
Right.
They would go out there but I look back at that 85 and 86 team just as I knew we were going to have this talk today. And I look and think that, that 85 team set 11 school records. And then the same thing in 86, school were 16 categories were set school records in. And just how good and dominant those teams were. And I think, I went back and looked at the seniors. You named them the seniors you graduated with, Billy Dickerson, Randy Smith, Jeff Dean, Alan Stadley, and yourself. All you guys made at least one ODAC team in your time there, if not more. But also, too, you guys were, like I said, 73, 39-2, 39-19 ODAC record, and 2-time ODAC champions. Which is certainly that kind of year that when I was a guy that was looking in, early 90s at schools, I started to really realize. So I would look at old media guides and see guys like yourself and all these guys and the success of the program. And, of course, things were simpler back then. As we've talked before, I kind of chuckled that, when I came here to play, that I thought the field was like Camden Yards. I thought it was the best field ever because they had seats that were elevated and they were going to give me a pair of shoes. And I said, this is the best thing ever, And I remember talking to Kurt my freshman year and saying, you're just going to take me on the spring trip, right? Like, I just want to go. Like, because he was leaving people behind for spring trips. So I just want to go. So, I know it was an era that was really successful. I guess I wanted to touch on this with you because it's the one thing that came during that time period that some people will identify with. I know I will because of what happened my senior year. But the flood year, because you had a flood that rolled through and washed that field out. So once again, you guys had to play one of those years. You didn't play on your field.
Right. I tried to think, and I remember it as clear as yesterday. We were in the room. It had been raining, like for a couple of days, but I don't remember it actually like raining like hard. I mean, I just remember it raining, and I believe it was a Monday night. We were watching Monday Night Football in my dorm, and somebody knocked on the door, and they said that the baseball field was underwater. So we're like, oh, let's go down there and look at it then. I mean, I was thinking it was like underwater, like there was a raging river running through the field. Like I had never seen anything. And you can go back and look now on YouTube of that flood in the fall of 85 in Virginia. I guess the dam broke, the river's just on the other side of the field. But it took out the dugout. The old goalpost they were the old goalposts that went straight up with the one bar. It is folded flat. Trailers were floating through there. It was amazing. It was really powerful. And I don't remember thinking Kurt wasn't there. He was somewhere else. He showed up the next morning. We went down, and literally fish were laying on the field in puddles, and we were picking them up and putting them in bags and dumping them in the river. I mean, it receded, but the field was the dugout was gone. I mean, there was no dirt. I mean, it just washed everything out. We spent the spring practicing at Clover Hill. So we had to get in the vans every day and go to Clover Hill. And for those that don't know where Clover Hill is, I couldn't drive there right now if you told me to, but I could then. And it was just a little field back in the woods, and we practiced there, all year. Now you think about the adversity and the challenges then, but I'm going to tell you, I don't remember ever complaining about it and saying we had to get in the vans, and I don't remember. And I maybe we did, but I don't think we did. And we played our home games up at the stadium in Harrisonburg, Memorial Stadium. The old stadium's not there any longer. I mean, that's where JMU plays, but we played all our home games there. And it was just, it was just a little, like today, I think kids today, if something like that happened today, they wouldn't know what to do. You know, they would complain about going in the van to Clover Hill. For us, just the fact, I guess we just got a chance to practice. We just loaded up vans every single day and drove to Clover Hill. We played a couple games there too, I believe. But that flood there's pictures. I've seen them on campus in old yearbooks and old alumni. You know, you get an alumni magazine every now and then, and they'll show the pictures, and they were real. And I was standing right there, and it was something I'll never forget. But playing off, and the next year we had the field, and they repaired the dugout, and we played my last year there on campus. But I really enjoyed playing at Harrisonburg. I thought, I mean, it gave us a different feel. It was a big stadium to us, and we just handled it. We handled it. I don't remember Kurt ever blinking an eye about it. I don't remember having a big meeting. You know, we're practicing at Clover Hill, get on the bus. Here's when the van leaves. This is when we get back, go to dinner, get up, go to class, come back, do it again. It just never fazed us. And today, if something happens to kids that I coach now, you know, it's totally different time period. Definitely.
Well, and the only reason I bring it up is I bring Maria back in. I was in my senior year in the fall of '96. It's the same thing. We had the flood came through here, and I'd always heard stories of what happened in '85 and never could quite envision it until I heard that raging river walking out of Wright Hall. You could hear this roar over behind Flory Hall. You could hear this roar. You have no idea what it was until you walk down there, and it was unbelievable to see the water roll through there. And same thing for us. We had to go to Montezuma and Harrisonburg in '97.
Right.
At the field ready, but I'd always heard stories at '85, and until I saw and so several of those guys experienced that in the fall of '96 that affected the '97 year. I always heard stories of it. It was impressive to see. So hopefully we don't have that issue anymore. So,
but the roar you're talking about, it's true. I mean, it was intimidating.
Yeah,
it was kind of scary, you know, because I mean, like, there's our field. We're not going to be on that field for a while.
Thank you for sharing, Barry. Those are some incredible stories. And you're right, you know, I don't know, those millennials, just complainers. No. Just kidding. But thank you for sharing that. That gives a lot of perspective, especially, you know, so many people watching tonight are from different years and different generations of BC baseball. So I'm sure in their heads, they're thinking about some of their stories, you know, and saying, oh, you know, we had something similar happen, or, oh, wow, I always heard the guys talk about that. And then actually hearing you tell some of those stories is probably pretty unique, especially with, you know, someone like Kurt, who was there for so many years. There's a lot of stories that he passes down for years. So it's nice to hear firsthand from some people. And at this time, I would like to open up the question and answer portion. So panelists and participants, if you look at the bottom bar, there's a little Q&A tab with two kind of message icons. So if you click on that, you can start submitting questions. So we'll bring Ryan back on. I'm gonna go ahead and do that. We'll bring, Nugget back on to join us. and people can ask questions directly to one of the participants tonight or to everyone. Depending on how many questions we get, we'll try to get through as many as we can in a timely fashion. And if we have any extras we don't get through, feel free to comment them on our Facebook Live post, and maybe some of the panelists tonight might check that out and answer a few if needed. So first question. Okay, so first question is to any of the panelists. So, Ben can start with this, or anyone that would like to. Since the pandemic halted all spring sports, how difficult was it for you to recruit new players for the year?
Well, I can add to it. I know Barry's had that experience, and he's still in lockdown mode with what he's got to go through. But no, for us, it was an interesting time because our season ended and didn't know what was going to happen next. We had a list of guys we needed to get out and see in the springtime, and that didn't happen. So, it kind of got us behind the eight ball a little bit. And then as we rolled into, June, we weren't allowed, as this college wasn't allow us to go off campus to recruit until probably mid to late June. So we got a little bit of a late start on the 2021 class, but been able to recover enough that we've been able to get out enough and see. So, I think the biggest challenge that hurt us was just trying to chase a few seniors last spring that we didn't get out and see. But I do think that it'll continue to be an interesting moving forward because, I think there'll be a high school season, but it's going to be different than it's been before, at least in the state of Virginia. So trying to chase some kids and see some kids will be interesting as well. But I think for as a whole, we've been able to make it work. If we couldn't have gotten out, it'd been a challenge. Now I know Barry in Division I, still in a dead period here, they can't go out and recruit, and this has been extended. So I'm not sure how it affects him more so than even someone like us.
Well, it's affected us. We were lucky in the sense that I didn't need to go out and recruit too many guys. As a small class, we needed literally 3 guys. So the pool of people, and you can kind of select. And what had happened was, and it worked in our favor is, and not that this, the bigger schools, we're a mid-major, small mid-major. The bigger schools had already signed a high portion of those 2021 graduates. So the 2021s that were remaining, there was a lot of good players still, and nobody could see them. And so through video and through people that would go to the games and would call me and say, hey, you need to see this guy. And then it became, get on the phone, talk to the coach, talk to somebody who knew the kid. And then, and we would, we just rolled the dice, took some chances. We feel pretty good about what we got. And as far as the rest of this, the situation, I'm not going to worry about it. When they allow us to go back out, we'll go back out, and we'll deal with it. But I'm not. I've learned my lesson on making mistakes, and I shouldn't say I've learned all the lessons because sometimes you keep making them. But about getting guys just because you want to settle for someone. We need to see you. We need to see you in action. So we're not going to take too many chances. We only needed 3. We feel pretty good about the 3 we got. And when they let us go back out, we'll go back out, and we'll take the next steps.
I think the one thing that's changed a little bit from a lot of people on this phone call, on the Zoom call now, just listening, is like we'll have more and more guys that commit before Thanksgiving we ever have. So our 21 class, we'll get kids to commit by Thanksgiving here, where it used to be. Even 10 years ago, kids wouldn't really make decisions until March or April or May. And now I think the time frame has changed for recruiting in Division III because of what's done at Division I, and they recruit further and further out. And so if you're a 2021 right now saying you're going to play at a Division I school, it's probably not going to happen because they've moved on from that. So I think because of that, people look at Bridgewater sooner in their career. And I think for us as a staff, our goal is to get kids on campus that are, rising seniors or juniors as early as possible so we can hopefully – have them see what Bridgewater has to offer. And then, because more of those kids are making decisions now by, September, October, November. And then we'll chase a few guys in the spring.
Absolutely. Thank you for answering that. Our next question is for Coach Spots. With the improved facilities at BC, what are some of the greatest needs for the program?
Well, I think, and I've always been very excited about our facility. Like, I feel like coming back here after being at Eastern Mennonite and coming back here to be the head coach, like, we have really good resources when it comes to the renovation that took place in Nininger Hall. Our weight room is first class. We have 2 full-time strength coaches. That is something we can tell our recruits about. They redid the dugouts, which for years, most people on here played in those small dugouts, and we didn't know anything any better. But, you had the 2 different dugouts. One was rebuilt from the flood in '96, and it looked different than the one that was down the third baseline that survived the flood. But they were just small places, and no one really worried about it or thought about it. But they came back after they did the Nininger renovation. They redid the dugouts. They turned our grass to Bermuda grass. They added a press box. They have added the hitting facility. So I will tell you this, when we bring recruits in here, I feel really positive about what we're selling them when it comes to the resources they have. Our biggest thing that I feel like we need to address we need to redo our backstop. That's one of the prime things pushing us. So it's time for us to replace our netting. And one of the things that I think would help add to the aesthetics and the functional part of our facility to go with our hitting facility, to go with our dugouts, to go with the press box, is we got to redo our backstop. That's probably my biggest project right now I want to work on, which involves 2 things, is hopefully trying to put a brick backstop in with new netting. And then also I'd love to take and tie in around our dugouts and around the bleacher area, like, patio area with picnic tables and, school colored umbrellas, and just really try to aesthetically clean that up. Our biggest thing, I think that some of the other programs in our league have an advantage over us, is that they have probably some better aesthetics around their facility. I feel really good about our surface, or the resources our guys need to get better. And the hitting facility we have is first class. Nobody has anything like that in our league. So really, we just want to try to address some of those projects. We need to put new fencing down the left field and right field foul. That fencing is old and has been around a long time. So those are 2 major projects. I'm trying to, get an idea on cost and resources that I think would make an immediate improvement to our facility, not only how it functions, but also the aesthetics, which once again will be a wow factor for recruits when they come on campus.
Thank you, Ben. And I have a question for Nugget. So I want to know, in your, from your perspective. So when Ben was a senior, am I correct in this timeline? Correct me if I'm wrong. When Ben was a senior, that was the year that you were coaching, correct? Or
That's right.
do I have it mixed up there?
You are 100% correct.
Okay, so with that, I would love to know, I guess I'm putting you on the hot seat, Ben, sorry. But
I've been there before.
yeah, Nugget, you saw Ben as a player, and obviously now he's the head coach of the program, was assistant coach with Kurt for many years. How have you seen, kind of his transition in that time? Obviously it went from a coach to player to now kind of a colleague situation, just to kind of see his growth over the years, and things that he, values and characteristics that he had as a player that he now carries on to coaching. I'd just be interested to hear about that.
Well, that's actually a really great question. One that I borderline get emotional trying to answer, but I think anyone that knows Ben at all, that played with him, whether it was played football with him or played baseball with him or whatever, anyone who's been a teammate with Ben probably knew early on that he was going to be a coach. I mean, that was going to happen. If you met Vic, you definitely knew Ben was going to be a coach. And Maria, Vic is Ben's dad. And it's as a player and as his teammate, he was just one of those guys that you never questioned what effort he was putting in to everything he did. And that you could say that about a lot of people on some of those teams, but you couldn't say that anymore about anybody other than Ben. I can tell you a story, and Barry was talking about how times have changed. I can remember a doubleheader before game 1. We were taking infield, outfield. Ben gets whacked with a ball in the face, and they haul him off to the hospital to get him stitched up. And he comes back and plays in game 2 with a face full of stitches and everything else. So I mean, that speaks to the kind of guy he was. Like, I was pretty sure he was, willing to sacrifice how he looked 20 years from now, which wasn't going to be good either way. He was like, hell, just get me back to the game. I got to play, so, I mean, that's the kind of guy he was as a player and as a teammate. I'll tell you a really funny story as a teammate. We used to take our trip down to Georgia, and we went down one year to play Emory University. And Emory had built a great facility. It was the Team USA training facility. It was great, and they had this All-American who was their shortstop starting pitcher. And he was starting against us that day. Everybody knew he was good, and he's probably going to give us a really tough time. And he was also their 3-hole hitter. Well, he grounded out to Alan Snow at short, which Alan ran one up the line a little far. Ben went up the line to make the play, and they collided. And as Ben was trying to get up to get the ball, they tied up. The guy pushed Ben down and took off to second base. And I've never seen Ben get more upset. And everybody saw it except for the only person that needed to see it was the umpire. And I'll never forget, as a teammate of Ben's, I was like, oh, hey, man, don't worry, we'll get him. And 2 plays later, there was a play at second base. He tried to get to second. We ended up tangled up at second base, and I found it convenient to push him down. And I'm not a very big guy, so he got the best of me, and then I ended up on my back, but he got thrown out of the game, and their starting pitcher was gone in the first. So we ended up winning that game. But, Ben was always the kind of teammate that you do anything for. Well, if Ben and I got thrown out of the game, that's what it took to make sure Ben knew that, we had his back. And I'll tell you, coaching him as a senior was a dream. I mean, he was the kind of guy that you hoped you had on the club, because anything you needed to happen, you just need to let Ben know. And he would do his best to make it happen. And from my standpoint, it was hard. That first year, it was hard coaching guys that I had played with, because the last thing you want to do as a guy that you were in the foxhole with the year before was to tell him that he wasn't working hard enough, or he wasn't doing what he was supposed to. And that was really tough, but you never had to worry about that with Ben, because he showed up, he punched his clock, he punched his card, and he went to work. I mean, that's how he was as a player, as a teammate, and coaching him. The really interesting part is that the next year, I didn't have sense enough to get out of there when the getting was good. I ended up coaching with Ben the next year. So we were together as players. We were together. I coached him for a year, and then we coached together. And some of the most valuable time I've ever spent with Ben. And if I had to choose anybody, to be leading that program, I mean, he's the guy. And I mean, you can just hear in his passion about looking. I mean, he's literally, he's actually looking through old media guides. That is Ben. I mean, he wants to know everything about the program, and he already did before he took the job. So I'm thrilled he's leading the program. I couldn't be more proud of him. And I think that's why and Kurt was a great leader. But I really do think that Ben has ignited a new energy into a lot of the more recent alumni. I mean, I'm looking at some of the guys on this call that have checked in. I mean, Bob Mitchell, Gene Crawford, Robbie Moose, Joel Morgan, Christian Saunders. I mean, these are names these are guys I love. I haven't heard some of these names in years, and I really think that's attributed to Ben and his energy and the person he is. So thanks for asking me that question.
Absolutely. Thanks for the incredible answer. That wasn't scripted, everyone. So that really just was his heartfelt answer. But that was great to hear. And I was wanting to hear that perspective, because I think that is unique, to say like, hey, I saw him first as a player, then as a coach, and then as someone that I admire as a fellow leader of young baseball players. So thank you, Nugget. That was great. Our next question, one for Ben. How would you describe the type of player you want to recruit, and has it changed over the years?
Well, I think the first thing we want to do, and I always stress this, is that, and I tell my assistant coaches, and I tell Taylor Davis, my assistant, is we want a guy that wants to be at Bridgewater. Like, I think that's the thing, is that you have to be all in on being at Bridgewater. Now, certainly there's a talent level we're trying to chase after that we think we have to win. And I tell our alumni, I'll tell our recruits, I'll tell our current roster, our goal is win a national championship. Like, I think when you've been to 14 conference titles, been to 10 regionals, you're not talking language that's unheard of. Like the 2014 team was one win away from going to national championship round. It was in a really good spot, you know, and I think in the championship game had to get beat twice, and unfortunately it happened, but that's baseball. But that team, I was fortunate enough to recruit some of those guys on the team and coach those guys for a little bit before I left Bridgewater. Is I think that's a realistic goal for our program. So we're chasing after really good players that we think, one, match us academically and are good fits and obviously match us talent-wise. But two, we want to find guys that want to be at Bridgewater because, and Barry alluded to this a little bit, it's not always easy. And you have to compete and you have to battle and you're going to have to be and maybe compete with another guy for your spot for playing time. You have to do those things. And I think, but when things are going great, you credit it to being here where you're happy, your teammates, your stuff. When things are going poorly, you're still excited to be here because you have to work through some tough times. So we want to find those guys who want to be here. I think the other thing too is, you know, like anybody would say, and the guys I played with, the success our programs had is guys that are just, you know, competitive, hard-nosed, and just love to play. I think you can get a bunch of those guys or find enough of those guys and still find ways to win at this level. If you can get those guys that have a little bit of that grit about them. Now, and don't get me wrong, and Bug and Nugget and Barry would know this too, you got to have some talent. But certainly that's kind of what we're trying to find, is that guy who fits us and fits Bridgewater and wants to be here. Because I think if you can do that, and I think even for years when I coached with Kurt, we would lose some guys to some other programs I would get frustrated by. But I remember talking to one of the other head coaches in the league. He's like, man, I don't know how you guys do it. But you just get some guys that we just don't ever run across or whatever, don't know who they are. But, man, you guys are always still leading and still, you know, chasing for championships and leading the ODAC. And I said, we never really lost many guys. We just got guys who fit the style and were very coachable and played hard. And we continue to try to do that now. So.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. We're coming down to just about our last three questions here. One person asked, I believe it's Joel Morgan, 94, said, I'm wanting to know if Nugget is still utilizing the stretching routine that he brought with him to BC in the fall of 94. I'm excited to hear what this is.
So, Joel, I really appreciate the question, and I got to tell you a story about that. So that was a Milwaukee Brewers stretching program from the early 90s that was really odd, and it worked, but I did it in my dorm room for about the first 2 months because I thought to myself, if I go out there and stretch like this, they're going to think I've lost my mind. But I had been doing it for 6 months before I transferred, so I didn't want to stop. So I'd do it in my dorm room, and then I'd come out and do the normal stretches. And eventually I got comfortable enough to do it. And as you can see, 25 years later, it's still what everybody remembers. But it was about 2 months ago, I got a call. Yeah, I do it every morning, Joel. Wake up, I do the kicks and the karate chops. I do it all still, and I feel great today. But I got a call about 2 months ago from a number I didn't recognize. And I thought, my gosh, who's this? Come to find out it's Chad Hensley. And I thought, what on earth could he want? He sends me a text, hey, Nugget, I was just wondering if you still had a copy of that weird stretching routine that you made us do all those years. And, you know, of course I don't have a copy of that anymore, but funny thing is his son is actually a really good player, and he's trying to get him more flexible, and apparently the program worked. But, yeah, I'm glad to see everybody remembered it. Do it every morning, 6:30, Joel. We can FaceTime and do it together.
We might have to have an encore performance event tonight where you just do a tutorial about how to do that stretching routine.
There you go. There you go.
Let me say, Marie, I will say this, that I'm, 45 years old now, and I can still do that routine.
There you go.
I can still do it right now because I remember it's odd, but I can still do it and not skip a beat. So.
That's great.
Awesome.
looks like the next question is from Bob Mitchell for Coach Davis. He said, Coach Davis, how have you seen the generation's progress since the time I played for you until now? Has it been more difficult to coach kids now or back when I played for you?
Well, Bob's probably the only guy we had chatted here real quick. The only guy that probably played for me and Kurt Kendall that went to Bridgewater. I mean, not too many guys have done that.
Chris Sabatino.
Chris Sabatino. That's a
Those are two, yeah.
Those are two guys. So the question that it's more difficult now. There's too many distractions. There's too much going on outside the circle of the team. It's very difficult to keep them focused. I mean, we have some really talented players on this roster, but there are a handful that once you get outside of the team, it's difficult to. You got mom and dad now. You got Uncle Joe and then Aunt Sally, and everybody's got a there's a video and there's a YouTube and there's a Twitter account and there's a Facebook account, and there's just too many. There's just so many decisions that you have to make. A kid's he's got the phone. I mean, we I'm not making fun, but back when Bob was playing, I mean, even before that. I mean, we played ball. We were tougher on them. We could be tough on them. The word discipline is not really punishment. Discipline is getting up in the morning and getting it done. Doing the work when you have to do the work. It's an action word more or less than a punishment word. But we stood on them a little bit harder back then. And Bob, to answer your question, it's just you have to really search out the old school blue collar player, and when you find them. You say, you go, I got a kid and I got two kids right now that are just like, they're balls to the wall and they're going to give you 100% and you don't even have to say anything to them. Those are the kind of guys you win with. And I know those are the kind of players, Ben, you got to try to find, to play in your program. And if you find enough of them, they can pull the rest of them together and pull them up. And I know all you guys that played on these great teams, there's probably somebody or group of older guys that believed in the core values of the program and are able to lead and bring people together. And I think it's tougher today than it was back when I was coaching as a young, 20 in my mid-20s. I mean, I'm in my mid-50s. It's a big difference. And I wouldn't say I enjoyed one better than the other, but it's a different type of mentality when you come to the field. And it's just more difficult now. It can be done, but it's you got to change. You have to change your attitude a little bit. I think you can still be tough on them, but it's a different type of tough.
Thank you, Barry. For the last question of the evening, I want to do kind of just a quick speed round between the three of you. And I know this is kind of an on-the-spot question because I didn't warn them I was going to ask this, and I probably should have. But I want each of you to describe your memory of BC baseball in one word. And I know that's really hard to only pick one word for, and it doesn't have to be just your memory, but what you think of when it comes to mind, when people say like, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear this? And just go around and you can give a brief explanation why if you would like to, starting with whoever was able to think of one first.
Well, I would say for me, it's loyalty would be the word because that carries into decades later on how I feel about the people and university college. I mean, there's nothing that can pull me away from how I feel. So loyalty would be my word.
Thank you, Barry.
I'll follow that up. I was stuck between two words. One was home and one was family. And I'll give you my brief explanation. When my senior year, we went 19-0 in the conference. and won the conference tournament. And as soon as we, finished piling up on each other, I had to get in the car and go home to my parents. My mom was diagnosed with cancer, and she passed shortly after. And I had no idea, but the whole team, got in vans and, came to support me and my family. And no, I'll never forget that. It's a family.
Very good.
No, I think, for me, I try to stress with our guys, I think of brotherhood. I just think of connection with guys that went through common things with you. And you just grew and matured from 18-year-old young men to 22-year-old guys ready to go out to the world. And while you don't always get to see each other as much as you get older and you have, get jobs and people spread out and you get families and, have other commitments that take time, I always think there's a common brotherhood and link between those who played there. And the fact that when you see that person, it's been 10 years, you can pick up like you just left off, because there's an instant connection. And I think that's one of the things that, for me, is always comes to mind.
Those were all amazing answers. Thank you guys so much for sharing that. The reason I asked is I just think that, there's so many great memories of the program. There's so many great characteristics that go with it. But sometimes when you have to boil it down to one word, it really shows what something's about. And obviously, BC baseball is something we all believe in and something we all cherish and support. And I just want to thank you all for being a part of it, for sure.
Sure.
This kind of wraps up our part of the evening. So I want to thank, of course, Coach Spots for,
Can I add one more thing, Maria?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I got some people. I just wanted to add two things. Is one, I know we touched on this earlier. I want just the alumni out there to try to, as we get past the COVID year and we move forward, hopefully into normal next year, is that one, you're always welcome on campus when we get back to normal routines. Please come by and watch us play. Please come by and watch us practice. If we're on the road playing, one of the things that always stands up to me is when we go to Christopher Newport University, Alex Nuttycombe will always come out and see me there. Even when I was at Eastern Mennonite, he would come out and see me, and he would stand in some brutal weather to watch us so we could talk for 20 minutes after the game. And I always appreciated that, and that bond was Bridgewater College baseball. So I want those guys to know you're always welcome back here, one. And two, we're going to try to continue to press alumni weekend or homecoming weekend in the future about trying to do just an all-day football tailgate. And then obviously move our alumni game to Sunday where maybe family, parents, and kids can watch you take BP on the field for those that still want to play and make it more of a game day versus doing it early. And then just know that we're going to try to continue to build upon that event we did in January in the future, because I want to try to give guys a reason to come back and to connect on campus that kind of kicks our season off. And I think it's something we're going to try to continue to develop. But I was excited about last year to see those people back. And the other thing, too, I just need to say this because and I think these guys may add to it real quick, but, I always have to get on here. And I know I'm excited to be the head coach of Bridgewater College baseball, but I have to personally always give a thank you and credit to Kirk Kendall because what he was able to do for me as a player and then as a coach for 14 years and that friendship I had and what he did for me is I'm excited to be the head coach here, but I'm also know that the success he had and what he did to get the program where it was at is a good point for me to take off. And I know he did a lot of things that was doing things nobody else was doing back then. So, I always have to thank Kurt because I do think was our alumni a lot. That's who they played for. There's a few out there that played for Tom Kinder. But a lot of them played for Kurt in the last, that they're still connected here. And I always want to thank him, but also know that, we're excited about building upon the success of our program.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that, Ben. And actually, what you said about homecoming weekend, I'm going to pull it up here just so I don't mess up the date, but we have some exciting news. We do know the date now for homecoming 2021. So I can go ahead and share that with us. Obviously due to the pandemic, we weren't able to host homecoming this October in the way we normally would on campus and celebrating with friends and family, but we are very excited for homecoming next year. So since Ben mentioned it, I can go ahead and share the date with everyone just as a preemptive save the date on your calendar. But homecoming weekend for next year will be Friday, October 15th through Sunday, October 17th, 2021. So go ahead and mark your calendars. I'm sure there will be some kind of a ode to baseball that weekend. So that's something we can all come back for, hopefully, and celebrate in person together. And I'm sure Ryan and Barry have already cleared their calendars completely. They'll be there.
It's next week, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, just to clarify, 2021, that date was next year. We wish it was this year, of course, but we're making lemonade out of lemons and looking forward to what we can do next year and enjoying the opportunity of gathering tonight virtually. So I want to thank everyone for watching, whether you're watching on Facebook or through our live Zoom webinar. And I want to thank Coach Spots, Barry, and Nugget, of course, for being a part of tonight's program. We appreciate everything you've done along the years, as a part of BC Baseball, and everything you'll continue to do, I'm sure, in the future to support our program, support Ben, and support all of our upcoming BC baseball players. So with that, I'm going to conclude the session and let us all just give a little wave goodbye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Maria.
Thank you,
Good seeing
Maria. I
you, Barry.
appreciate it.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
See you later, Ryan. I'll see you, bud.
See you, Spotsy.
See you, man. Thank you.